What if a tragedy, just an immense, almost unimaginable catastrophe unfolded just a few months back, and yet, for reasons we're going to explore today, it hardly made a blip on the global radar? Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're zeroing in on, a truly devastating recent attack on Sudan's Zam Zam refugee camp. It's often considered the largest displacement camp in the country. A critical story, but yeah, often overlooked. It really demands our attention. Okay, so for this deep dive, our sources include a very detailed investigation by The Guardian. We've also got findings from a committee specifically set up to investigate the death toll, and crucially, some powerful, really harrowing testimonies from survivors and associations working on the ground. Our mission here is to try and uncover the true scale of this tragedy. We want to understand the specific nature of the assault, what actually happened, and place it within the context of the broader, ongoing, and frankly catastrophic conflict in Sudan. It's really about getting beyond those initial headlines, to grasp the full human cost. So as we started digging into this, the initial reports about the Zamzam attack, this was between April 11th and 14th, they indicated significant loss of life, sure. Early figures were maybe around 400 non-Arab civilians killed. The UN mentioned hundreds dead. But as we look deeper into our sources, what did the investigation start revealing about the actual scale? How much did those numbers change?
Well, it's quite striking, actually. The way the numbers evolved as more investigation happened, they reveal a really stark increase in the estimated casualties. It completely shifts our understanding of the magnitude of this event. There was a committee, as you said, set up to investigate the death toll. So far, they've counted more than 1,500 killed.
1,500. That's already vastly different from those initial reports.
Vastly. And listen to this. Mohammed Sharif, he was part of Zamzam's former administration and part of that committee. He stated the final total would likely be significantly higher. He said there are many bodies still not recovered from the camp, describing them horrifically as lying inside homes, in the fields, on roads.
It's left there.
Yeah.
And what about the experts analyzing this, people gathering testimony directly?
Yeah, we looked at an atrocity expert, someone with decades of experience specifically in Darfur. This expert interviewed scores of survivors who escaped Zamzam and their belief. Up to 2,000 people may have been killed. But here's what really stood out. This expert made a truly striking observation. They said, every single testimony from everyone who escaped knew family members who were killed. And then added, that's something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Even comparing it to the genocidal slaughter in Darfur back in the 2000s.
Wow. That's an incredibly powerful and frankly disturbing statement from someone with that kind of deep experience. What do you think that specific detail tells us about the nature of this attack? I mean, beyond just the sheer numbers, does it suggest something deliberate, a unique level of depravity?
I think it absolutely suggests deeply personal and systematic targeting. It feels like the aim wasn't just to displace people, but perhaps to eliminate or certainly to terrorize on a very individual community level. I mean, when literally every single survivor you speak to knows someone who was killed, that points to a brutality that was just pervasive, inescapable. It feels different from, say, casualties in broader combat.
Yeah.
And there's more data backing this up. The Darfur Diaspora Association, Abdallah Abu Garda from the UK branch, indicates that about 4,500 of their members knew a friend or relative killed in Zamzam.
4,500 members knew someone killed.
Exactly. And on top of that, he stated at least 2,000 Zamzam residents are still missing, vanished.
So if we're talking over 1,500 confirmed killed, potentially up to 2,000, maybe even more, this assault by the paramilitary rapid support forces, the RSF, it would rank as the second biggest single war crime of Sudan's current catastrophic conflict, only behind that horrific ethnic slaughter in West Darfur a couple of years ago.
That's the grim reality the numbers point towards.
And it's important to remember, Zamzam camp wasn't new. It's been home to displaced people for over 20 years. Generations grew up there. It was a place of long-term vulnerability. Okay, so let's delve deeper now. The accounts from the survivors themselves, they paint an incredibly harrowing picture of what they faced during those 72 hours. Claire Nicolet from Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, she's the deputy head of emergencies, she said the attack targeted one of the most vulnerable people on Earth. Yeah. What specific atrocities were repeatedly reported by those who managed to survive?
Well, the testimonies consistently speak of mass executions and large-scale abductions. These seem to be defining characteristics of the assault. Survivors also recounted, widespread looting, pervasive sexual violence, and other attacks they suffered while trying to flee while on the road. Plus, just appalling living conditions in the transit displacement sites they ended up in.
So it wasn't just the initial attack. The horror continued even for those who escaped.
Exactly. It suggests these weren't just random acts of violence. The sources point towards systematic tactics of terror and displacement, designed perhaps to break communities, to instill fear, and ensure they couldn't return.
And the abductions, you mentioned those were large scale?
Yes, that's a particularly dire aspect mentioned in the sources. Large numbers of women were abducted, and many remain missing. We don't know what happened to them. Our sources do indicate that at least 20 women are known to have been taken specifically to Nyala. Nyala is known as an RSF stronghold, which suggests potentially organized exploitation.
That's chilling.
And, if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the Zamzam attack, horrific as it isn't an isolated incident. It's part of this wider, absolutely devastating conflict that has just reshaped Sudan. The war itself between the Arab-led RSF and the Sudanese military broke out back in April 2023. And it's just been characterized by repeated atrocities from the start. It's forced millions from their homes. It's caused what many call the world's largest humanitarian crisis right now.
Right. It's crucial to see this in that broader context. It sounds like a conflict just rife with immense human suffering on multiple fronts. What other significant atrocities have we seen documented, particularly from the RSF, that help us understand this pattern of violence?
Well, yes, sadly, there are other shocking examples attributed to the RSF in our sources. There's the estimated 10,000 plus people, mainly Maseli and other non-Arab Sudanese ethnic groups, believed to have been killed by the RSF and their allied militias in Janina. That's West Darfur's capital. And that happened over about 2 months, starting from mid-April 2023.
10,000.
10,000 plus estimated. And then there was a UN report detailing over 800 killed in just one episode of fighting in a suburb of El Geneina in November 2023. So the scale of violence in Darfur linked to the RSF has been immense.
And it's important to be clear, isn't it? While we've focused on the RSF's actions in Zamzam based on these sources, the Sudanese military, their opponents in this war, they've also been accused of myriad war crimes. Specifically, things like the massacre of civilians through indiscriminate bombing raids.
Absolutely. The sources are clear that both sides face serious accusations. The Sudanese military's alleged actions, particularly aerial bombardments in civilian areas, have also caused immense suffering. It highlights the complex and devastating nature of this conflict for ordinary people caught in the middle.
So multiple actors accused of terrible crimes.
Indeed. And this whole situation, this complex picture of violence, it is on the radar of international legal bodies. The International Criminal Court, the ICC, stated just last month that it had reasonable grounds to conclude that war crimes and potentially crimes against humanity were unfolding right now in Darfur.
Okay, so bringing this all together, given the sheer scale of what happened in Zamzam, the numbers, the nature of the violence, the context of ongoing alleged atrocities, what does this all mean when we consider the global response? Or maybe the apparent lack of response? How did the world react to an event of this magnitude?
That's maybe one of the most troubling aspects highlighted in our sources. Abdallah Abu Garda from the Darfur Diaspora Association we mentioned earlier, he put it very starkly. He said, and I quote, "The massacre at Zamzam, home to displaced people for over 20 years, is one of the most heinous crimes in recent global history." End quote. Yet no global outrage has followed.
No global outrage.
That's his assessment. And consider the timing. It's quite striking. This horrific attack happened literally on the eve of a British government-led conference in London, a conference intended specifically to try and bring peace to Sudan.
Wow. The contrast is jarring.
Yeah.
It really does raise an important question for all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About which crises manage to capture global attention and why. Especially when you compare this situation to other conflicts that maybe garner much more widespread media coverage and public reaction.
It does. It forces us to confront some maybe uncomfortable truths about media focus, about political priorities, perhaps about a certain fatigue or desensitization when it comes to ongoing complex humanitarian crises like Sudan's. The contrast in visibility for an event seemingly of this scale in Zamzam versus other global events is, well, it's stark. You have to ask why.
So this deep dive has really uncovered the shocking scale of the attack on Zamzam camp. We're talking a committee count of over 1,500 killed, experts believing it could be as high as 2,000. Possibly more. Thousands still missing. We've heard about the specific horrors survivors faced, mass executions, large-scale abductions, sexual violence. Just brutal. And we've placed this terrible tragedy within the broader, devastating Sudanese conflict, where both the RSF and the Sudanese military stand accused of horrific war crimes. Understanding these details, digging into them like this, even when it's incredibly difficult to hear, it feels crucial if you want to gain a truly informed perspective on global humanitarian crises, and it highlights the critical importance of investigating these events thoroughly. So maybe something to reflect on as we finish. What does that reported lack of global outrage for a tragedy apparently of this size, the one highlighted in our sources, what does that tell us about the current landscape of international awareness and humanitarian response? And how can understanding the specific granular details of a single event, like this horrific assault on Zamzam, how can that challenge our own perceptions? Maybe encourage deeper engagement with crises that often fly under the radar.